Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Survivor Becomes a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. But Maury, point of view. Well, with Jack on his way back to us, I ought to focus on my main project. Essentially, I want to create a greenhouse for myself up in my mountain. Though, I'll be honest, when I say that I've never personally managed one. I only know what I do know, thanks to books and listening to farmers who wanted to talk about their crops. Admittedly, I'm actually anxious about this project since it's not something I can just build, kill, or otherwise destroy. Even with magic, something like a plant will take time and care. First, I picked 2 of the rooms I carved out and poured more energy into smoothing the walls, floors, and ceiling. Once the rooms were neat and cleaned up, I carved out a rectangle that was somewhat smaller than the overall floor space, and then dug down 1.5 feet and even more stone to make the room for the soil. I looked over the 2 greenhouse rooms as I considered the next steps. Next, I go ahead and mulch the scrap wood and the leftover tree that I had from making the training equipment earlier, along with a whole tree from my personal collection. It was pretty fun imagining as I put the tree through a wood chipper, though what I did to achieve the effect wasn't as complicated as I thought. Still, it did cost a bit of mana. I went ahead and spread the mulched trees along the bottom of the stone garden beds, providing a layer for future nutrients that should feed whatever crops grow here. Afterward, I began filling the stone holes with soil I pulled from outside when I was building the longhouse, and to my surprise, I noticed that some kinds of worms, grubs, and other insects managed to survive within my storage and are still writhing around in the freshly poured out soil. If what I remember is correct, these critters should be mainly beneficial to what needs to be done to the soil. Finally, I take a look at the gypsum I harvested, which, while it is an excellent source of sulfur and calcium that will no doubt be extremely useful for more destructive projects, it is the very same sulfur and calcium that I want for my crops that will definitely nourish and develop them even further. After crushing some of the gypsum I have into fine sandy grains, I mix it into the middle layer of the soil before looking around in what is still a very dark room. I'll need light that also emitted warmth. Luckily, I had already figured that little trick out. Well, I could settle for a plain yellow ball of light. Some reading I remember explained that the best shade of light was a sort of pinkish purple. The exact reasons are lost on me, however. It's one of those trivia details that stick due to the oddities of the information that makes me commit to this color as I conjure up lighting that wouldn't feel out of place in some kind of love hotel. All in all, I feel like my greenhouses are ready. What I need now is a secure source of water. While I could probably conjure it out of mana, I would prefer to use water from a natural source. As it stands, I currently don't have or haven't reached a natural spring in my mountain, and I could probably pull water from the river into my storage using Jack or any of the others. While I may have been concerned about chemical contamination out of free-flowing and unfiltered water, I have a good reason to feel that the level of pollution is nowhere near that of my world, which should make the water significantly safer to use with less filtering for crop use in particular. I am considering what else I could do when I sent Jack flitting into my core room with some of his crew birds. So I shift my attention around to see him setting down a red bundle filled with chunks of vegetables, fruits, and leafy crops. I can't exactly say that they're leafy greens, since there are a lot of odd colors that scientifically don't make sense to me. The other 5 crew birds present chunks of smaller fruits, and one even shows off something that looks like some kind of red wheat grains. All right, good work, Jack. Thank you very much for your efforts. I enthuse focusing on him before these otherworldly crops entirely consume my focus. Jack beams, fluttering his wings with pride as he looks up to my core. It was my pleasure, Maury. Send me on more jobs like these. It was quite fun sneaking about like that. He raved as he bowed in his particular way, with one wing out and another in his chest, as he then used the wind magic to pull his bandana back to himself and carefully tie it up again. If you are successful already, I'll definitely have to consider it, I expressed cheerfully to him. In the meantime, you are dismissed. Feel free to rest before returning to your duties." With that, he flits off with his crew birds as I summon Frisbee over. The rodent scurried over from the burrow and up before my call, curiously, before noticing the fruits, grains, and vegetables with wide eyes. "All right, Frisbee, I need you to taste all of this and tell me about them," I instructed, as she looked over to me with a curious flick of an ear. "Taste? Are you sure? Such a grand feast is too much for a humble servant like myself," she said deferentially. I could practically see her salivate at the sight, but she was already backing off almost anxiously as the little feet pitter-patter on the stone. I can't help but mentally smile at how reserved she was. It was kind of cute, in a way, though I made sure to sound as encouraging as possible as I spoke to her again. No, it's fine. I need your help to taste all of these. You have the best sense of taste out of all my beasts, and you're one of the few who can eat plants and vegetables without trouble and be able to judge them properly," I explained as best as I could so that she could be appropriately motivated. Her hesitancy was still apparent, but her ears twitched adorably while I explained the logic behind my decision and how useful and needed she was in this situation. Still somewhat anxious, she stepped forward and sniffed at what looked like a chunk of some kind of blue pumpkin. I watched as she seemed to sample everything, savoring and enjoying every morsel she portioned out for herself, as if it may have been her last. It almost made me wish I still had a mouth after watching her move from one crop to the next. Afterward, she sat back on her haunches, cleaning her whiskers, before patting her plump belly. "So, how did they taste?" I asked her curiously. Frisbee looked up at me, her ratty smile on her face, as she squeaked out gently, "Delicious! It was all delicious," she gushed happily. I sat there a bit, waiting for her to expand on that little more. When she fails to do so, I probe a little more. Do you have anything else to say, like, how did it taste? Is it anything bitter, sweet, sour, maybe even savory?" She hesitates, again, rubbing her whiskers anxiously as she looks over at my call before looking at the ground again. "I was supposed to be tasting for all of that, then," she said softly, almost as if talking to herself. I sighed to myself, but couldn't help but mentally shrug. "It looks like we had a disconnect somewhere, but don't worry. You did just fine, Frisbee," I expressed kindly, as she nodded somewhat anxiously still. End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons: Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster177, Lord Azrekahl, AmbroseKTal, Quantem Wensday, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Blueberry Cat. Thank you very much for the support. It is super appreciated.